Mr. Alex Agius, how are you doing?
Okay, fine.
Thank you so much for taking the time to do this. I can see just as we've started, your smartwatch is already going off. So which tells me, which tells me that you're attributed to tech in some way, shape, or form. Maybe before we start, just give me a little bit of background on who you are and what your affinity is with tech to begin with.
Yes, so first of all, I'm Alex Saliba, a member of the European Parliament from Malta. I am part of the Socialist and Democrats group in the European Parliament and also occupy the role as Vice President of the group responsible for the digital transition. So basically, the biggest chunk of my time in the European Parliament is coordinating legislation dealing with the digital sector, from the Digital Markets Act, Digital Services Act, the AI Act, which we are working upon right now, and also other initiatives such as the Common Charger, where I was not only coordinating as Vice President of the European Parliament, but I was also the chief negotiator in the European Parliament dealing directly with the Commission and the Council. I love tech. And I'm also an Apple user, so I have nothing against Apple. Just I want some more common sense in technology. And I think that Common Charger is totally common sense.
I think it makes absolute perfect sense. I can't believe this has been an issue for so long, but in reality, I think the sort of way that the European Parliament handled it was quite conducive to industry. Right? You let the industry do its thing for a decade, and then said, okay, hey, this is a serious problem, and this is the simple solution, right? So,
I always believe that we have to be, as legislators, a step beyond technologies. So if we are reactive all the time, that doesn't help. What did the European Parliament do to start and kickstart this whole process? So 13 years ago, we were still using those big bulky phones. We had 33 different chargers on the market.
wow.
We did a memorandum of understanding, which was soft legislation, which was not proper legislation like we have today. And from these 33 different standards, until a couple of months ago, we ended up with 3 different standards. Speaking only about smartphones now. So we had the transition from traditional big bulky mobile phones to smartphones. What we did in this legislature, we said, okay, we have been trying by soft legislation, by meeting these big tech companies, but we had this idea in the European Union way back in 2019 that big tech was too big to handle. And that is a very big misconception. And I think we proved ourselves with different legislation, not only the Common Charger, but with the Digital Services Act, Digital Markets Act, with the AI Act, with the Data Act. These were all novel pieces of legislation where other continents, such as the US, we have very frequent meetings with the US. They were laughing at us when we went there and when we said, we want to define AI. They told us, but how can you define AI? We deal with it sectorially. Now, they are also following our example. And this was the same thing with this Common Charger, a simple solution. But in this legislature, we wanted to achieve 2 things. First of all, have one standard for smartphones. So Apple, which was resisting for these big changes to keep up with their proprietary charging solution. Why? Not because it's a better standard, the Lightning.
Because it's their business model.
Because it's their business model.
Absolutely.
The USB-C standard is much more evolved. It is faster when it comes to data transfer speeds. It is also much faster when it comes to fast charging. So there were no argumentations going in the direction of the Lightning cable. The same old story, the same argument that these big tech companies do. Yeah. Please don't legislate because you will stifle innovation.
Yeah, but in the meantime, we have more cash reserves than the U.S. government, right? Which is which is hilarious, right? But and this is coming from a company that has specific bolts which you cannot use a traditional screwdriver on, just to prevent people from tampering from the right to repair, essentially, right?
That's another very important concept that we are pushing forward. We cannot speak about environmental sustainability. We cannot speak about consumer choice, consumer rights without having more interoperability when it comes to technologies. But the other thing that we wanted to achieve in this legislature, which was unheard of pre-2019, and we really pushed hard for that, was not only to regulate smartphones. Maybe mobile phones were the portable technology that we used on a daily basis until a couple of years ago. But today we are using laptops, tablets, earbuds, earphones, digital cameras, portable gaming consoles, portable speakers, portable mice, portable speakers.
There's
all
so
e-readers.
many, so much.
All of this
ridiculous.
technology is basically consistent with the charging technology of smartphones. And what did we say? And what did we push for? We pushed for a wider scope. So next year, we will not be having a common charger only for smartphones, but we will be having a common charging solution, a common port. So you can use one common charger, the European common charger, the USB-C charger, which is the most advanced standard that we have until now. And I find it hard to believe that in the next 5 years there will be a standard which will be superior to the USB-C.
Definitely not.
It's very difficult.
Definitely
It's
not.
very difficult. So from next year, when you are buying one of these 14 different technologies, you will be having the same port. We just extended the entry into force for high-end laptops and for laptops, obviously, because their charging characteristics are a little bit different. But from next year, you will be able to use one common charger for these 14 different products that we use on a daily basis, that we carry on with us when we travel, that we use everywhere.
Literally.
We're living in a mobile world.
And the travel part, I think, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned that, because that, I think, is one of the most awkward situations which this piece of legislation solves, right? Like I cannot tell you the amount of times I've walked through an airport and people think I'm a terrorist because I've got like 15 different wires and I've got backups for the backups just in case, right? Because when you're traveling, things go wrong, and you don't blame the airport security guys because you know. And this, it was completely pointless, and you've just fixed that problem. So on behalf of international travelers everywhere, thank you.
And the point that in each and every household, this is a fact, we have a whole drawer full of different chargers,
Everyone has
which
that drawer.
we keep there just in case if something happens, if one breaks down.
Exactly.
And
And the
we
bank gets
barely-
bigger and
we
bigger and
barely use
bigger.
it. And we also carried out an impact assessment before we came up with this legislation,
Okay.
which proves in the European market that 1 in every 3 chargers which are bundled with smartphones, and now I'm speaking about smartphones alone, 1 in every 3 chargers that you find there in the box, automatically you're paying for it, we're using non-renewable materials to produce it,
Doesn't get used and ends up in the bin.
never gets opened from its packaging.
Makes sense.
We never use it. And this happens to each and every one of us. Open that famous drawer that you have in your household and try to find a charger which you never, ever use.
Absolutely, and there's many of them. I mean, especially sort of at things you get at conferences and stuff like that. For example, right? Like everyone and their mother's got a USB Type 2, C, and Lightning keychain. But interesting, or sort of maybe a bit of a side angle. But does this law do anything to address the efficacy of different types of USB-C cables? What do I mean? There are many companies out there which would, sticking a particular name on them is kind of difficult, but would sell a USB-C
As a fast charger.
looking cable for very cheap, but in reality there's this thing is kind of siphoning off data in some way, shape or form. Now I know this is a very sort of abstract problem, but is there some way that this legislation affects that? Like, does it mandate a specific housing size or anything like that? Or
What we're trying to do, because the legislation will come into force next year, 2024. What we did is also to regulate fast charging. So charging speed is also being regulated. And why was this also a very important concept?
extremely important.
During the past months, before the unveiling of the new Apple line of products. We were hearing a lot of rumors coming in from everywhere, but Apple never confirmed or denied them. That, for example, Apple were trying to initiate a program which will be basically giving the stamp for particular chargers which are approved by Apple. So a USB-C approved by Apple. If you buy a cheaper charger, which is still of the same standard of those approved by this Apple program, then you will get slower charging speeds. That has been addressed also in the legislation.
Amazing.
And we have 4 months ago sent a letter to Apple directly. We asked them to be part of a meeting within the Internal Market Committee, which is the committee dealing with this legislation, to make it sure that they can't bypass with this
loophole. It's a hell of a loophole.
With this loophole to be able to still sell their proprietary USB now C charger. So that was a door that we tried to close down.
And I think that's a really good avenue to have done so. And I think possibly without wanting to, by standardizing the power draw, the voltage, the amplitude, and all of that stuff, and I'm assuming the bandwidth and the data transfer rates, which fit in a USB cable, then inadvertently you've also thwarted like quite a big cyber risk, right? So there's a bunch of companies that'll sell you a cheap cable. And that's that they're losing money on, a little bit of money on, but every time you plug it in, that thing's calling home and sending data back to a CNC somewhere, command and control center somewhere. So that's, I think you've inadvertently also.
And another very important point, because ultimately you have to lead consumers to make the right choices. And when it comes to chargers, and this happened to me in the past before I delved into the subject and became more aware of some technicalities of this issue. Sometimes consumers feel more safe to buy the bundled option. So they will tell you, I won't risk to use my old USB-C charger because this can burn my phone down, or this can lower my battery life. Now, all the products that will be coming in the market from next year will also have pictograms showing maximum power characteristics of the charger and if the charger is included or not.
Amazing.
Why? Because imagine, we came up with the standard for the common charger, but at the same time, we end up in a situation where for each and every product that you buy, you will find a bundled charger. How are we going to reduce electronic waste? We will still end up with the same electronic waste. So what did we do? First of all, make it a point and an obligation for all those companies which are targeting these 14 different categories of products, targeting the single market, they have to give an option to consumers. The bundled option, so smartphone and charger, or the unbundled option, which should and must cost less, which is just the smartphone, just the laptop, just the tablet. So we will be having a choice by having all the information directly on the packaging of the product, so not hidden in those big leaflets, never-ending, small scripted leaflets.
And that's a really good point.
Showing clearly if the charger is included or not, and the maximum and minimum power characteristics of each and every charger.
Exactly, and I imagine this information is going to be displayed in multiple ways, right? But
no, it will be displayed in the same way, visible way, in each and every member state.
Beautiful.
Clear way.
Beautiful.
Without
so
market distortion.
What that means is you can be a consumer with zero kind of technical background. You don't have to understand anything, and it just works. If only we could do the same thing for food and nutrition, I would be ridiculously happy. But that's a fantastic first step.
5 different systems of view: the traffic light systems, the alphabet system,
neither
Confusing
of them make sense. Like you have to have a PhD to be able to understand like what the back of this tomato juice is gonna do to your body anyway. But that's a different topic. The other thing I think you've also inadvertently thwarted is battery waste, because once you have a standard method of power delivery that's sort of safe and reliable, it means that the batteries that are being charged are going to be treated more healthily, so they'll last longer, which means and people get more out of their devices, which means that less waste in the ground, which is fantastic for everyone. So that's I think you've done a hell of a job of sort of winning this David versus Goliath kind of moment, right? So, but to do this, you obviously had to be, I guess, in some ways, extremely arrogant and extremely confident that this is the right solution to push forward. And now, like in retrospect, everything looks obvious, right? But what's that saying? Success is little like having a baby, right? Everyone says congrats after you've given birth, but nobody knows how many times you've been fucked. And I'm sure you must have gone through a lot of that to get to this stage. So what was it like for you at the beginning when sort of this idea was in its infancy, and what was the whole driver for you?
So basically we had two different situations. Obviously, on one hand, we had the only company, Apple, which was totally resisting with the argumentations of stifling innovation that, I don't like to use the word threaten, but in a polite way, they were telling us, okay, the European market, a small market compared with other continents, so we will give you your USB-C with lower data transfer speeds, with when it comes to fast charging, it will be a mess for you. What we saw 4 weeks ago, when we had the Apple products launch, that they were promoting the USB-C as having a studio at home. So if you own a MacBook and you own now the new iPhone 15, you can just clip in your USB-C and you will have mega data transfer speeds.
Wow, who knew?
Our argumentation from day one with Apple. But a very interesting thing. We had other companies such as HP, Samsung, Huawei, which were telling us, well done for the common charger, because they were already using USB-C. But when the second part of the legislation, which is not getting so much visibility right now, why? Because now everyone is concentrated on wire charging. But when we touched also a standard for wireless charging, and now the biggest issue when it comes to proprietary charging solutions, it was wire charging for Apple, but for the rest of the companies, it's wireless charging. So when we tried, and we had a lot of push, not only from companies, but also from the commission, from the institutions, when I was moving the idea of also regulating the standard for wireless, which is still not as much developed as the USB-C, but it's developing fast. But it's totally fragmented. So just one simple example. You have an iWatch, you have an iPhone. You have two different wireless chargers for the same product.
Seriously?
Yes. The wireless charger for your iPhone is not compatible with your iWatch. They are not compatible.
I had no idea, actually.
You have to buy two different wireless chargers for the same brand. And this is not only Apple. This is applicable for Samsung, this is applicable for Huawei, this is applicable for the majority of companies. So what were they telling us? Okay, let's shoot down Apple's proprietary charging solution, but hey, don't touch wireless. But what we achieved in this legislation is also regulating, in a couple of months, the Commission has to start negotiations with European standardization authorities. We are converging to QI technology when it comes to wireless. That is the predominant technology for wireless charging, but also to have a common standard for wireless charging in 2.5 years' time. Why? imagine in 2 years' time, we will be seeing enthusiastically the product launch for the new iPhone of Apple, iPhone 18, and it would be totally wireless charging. And we would end up in the situation of fragmentation when it comes to charging.
Absolutely, it would be just
So
another
we are
loophole.
preempting. And that is why you have to preempt technology. Maybe today technology will tell you and people will tell you, but wireless technology is not as efficient from an energy point of view, from a usage point of view as wired technology. There is a lot of loss of energy when it comes to wireless charging. But technology is evolving in that direction, so we have to preempt.
And most importantly is that we have something to be able to go by, right? Like we have some historical data because we've seen what's happened with wire charges, and it's going to be very, very similar in the wireless space. And I think they are two sort of different segments. I mean, like there's one of the major reasons why you wireless charge personally isn't ease of use, it's battery health, right? It's because it keeps the temperatures low, and so the battery can last longer. So if you have a device that's €1,500, then you want to make sure that thing lasts as long as possible, right? But let's sort of use this example and slap it onto AI, because AI is much more nuanced. Right, and there's many more pitfalls in AI, and Europe by any means isn't leading the space, not even close, as far as who's sort of further along the line, right? Like it's China, and then it's the US, and then it's us trying to say, like, hey, where's all of our startup money to get into this AI space? But the regulatory hurdle does also present a fantastic opportunity, but it also comes with its own risks, right? So what is it about that about regulating AI that you think Europe is doing right?
So the issue that you mentioned is very problematic at EU level in all digital sectors. In app creations, for example, when you have app creators, we have the best innovators in Europe. But then when it comes to scaling up, we are doing terribly. So the most important thing, even when it comes to AI, we have a lot of R&D going on in Europe. We have very good innovators, but scaling up is a problem. What is the issue with AI, and why do we want to regulate when it comes to AI? We want to have a more human-centric approach when it comes to AI. We have a set of values in the European Union that we want to protect. And there are risks when it comes to artificial intelligence, and we want to mitigate those risks. We don't want just to define AI just for the sake of defining AI, but define the high-risk AI, which can cause a lot of issues, and also regulate the processes so that it's a harm reduction thing. I think that 3 years ago, when we started this whole process, people were not engaging with us, let's be honest. When you spoke about AI, it was seen as a too distant thing, like you're speaking about space.
And then ChatGPT came out, and people are like, oh, I can see, I can touch.
ChatGPT came out. You had the issue of deepfakes,
Yeah.
where people were starting to question, but hey, come on. Now I can end up in a situation where I have a picture of myself, which is used. Let's use the word used.
Yeah.
And you cannot make the distinction between AI and reality.
It's getting very, very
So,
difficult.
When I started using and testing ChatGPT, and I noticed one thing: when you have an AI system which is correcting itself, then technology is evolving fast. So, and we have seen a change in discourse too. I mentioned the US. I was in Silicon Valley 2 years ago. Stanford University, we were discussing not the common charger, but we were discussing the Digital Services Act, Digital Markets Act. They were basically with us on many points, but When we touched AI, they were laughing at us. They were telling us, but what are you trying to do? This is stupid. Regulating AI doesn't make sense. 6 months ago, we were meeting members of the House and senators in the US. The discussion was totally different. So now people are becoming much more aware about the need to regulate more, the need to open up the lid when it comes to AI, when it comes to how algorithms are being used, when it comes to data sets that are being used, when it comes to the use of AI and our democracies, how it is affecting basically our most fundamental rights. So we are saying no stifling of innovation, but at the same time, again, we cannot continue to use the argumentation of stifling of innovation, stopping technologies to grow, not being competitive, and giving away our most fundamental rights. So finding this right balance, and I think that with this legislation, we will be able to find this right balance.
I think you're sort of very right in the sense that Europe has spent a lot of time, on the fence, right? And that because we've spent so much time deliberating, we've lost the advantage clearly. But you very rightly said that ChatGPT is made sort of AI at the forefront of people's minds, right? But you also touched on the idea of sort of how AI can affect our democracy and stuff like that through deepfakes as one simple example. So and algorithms. So this is just my 2 cents at the end of the day. I think there's a stark difference between AI and between phone chargers in the sense that with charging in general, we're now in a position to be able to accurately and correctly regulate in the future because we have the lessons of the past and we're able to sort of extrapolate, learn, and move on. AI is a little bit different, but because there's still so much fog of war and unexplored territory, but at the same time, the risks, I think, are much more clear and much more evident and much more sort of in your face. So, like one simple example that comes to mind, or two rather, which tie in, I think, quite nicely together. One is that, as you may be aware, the algorithm for TikTok in China and TikTok in Europe are vastly different, right? For the audience, whatever TikTok shows your kids in China is things to make them want to achieve some kind of excellence, right? Like a kid who's an epic archer, or a kid who's an awesome scientist, right? And that's what sort of drives traffic. Whereas in Europe, it's okay. Let's make the West stupider and promote dances and stuff like that. So that's one really evil side of AI. But the other evil side of AI is on the other side of the fence, and that's on Facebook and Instagram, etc. Based on like that algorithm around the world is fundamentally built to keep people engaged, and it is much easier to keep people engaged if they are sad than if they are happy, and that's not only, I think, a threat to our democracy, but a threat to our well-being as a species. And it's a risk that's in front of us,
You are totally right. And right now I'm working with a Dutch member of parliament. I'm negotiating on behalf of the S&D group on a very important initiative when it comes to those technologies which keep us hooked in. Addictive patterns of platforms. And that is also another aspect. So when it comes to AI and dangers of AI, you have the aspect of Cambridge Analytica, where you are being fed with, so I'm creating your profile and I'm feeding you all the time with that information, which you will probably continue to watch, which you will probably like, but will guide your choices, political choices,
targeted propaganda
in a totally different way that you saw things before. You started this loop.
For sure.
And this is not sci-fi
No,
movies.
this is the reality of life.
An election in the US, a presidential election in the US, Brexit referendum, and election in third world countries, which were totally manipulated by this crazy stuff. Because I like to refer to it as crazy stuff.
It is. It's the stuff of movies, no? But it's happening in real life.
Again, data and metadata today are being used so intrusively by these platforms that they are dominating not only our commercial choices, but also our political choices. And that is why we need to do something about it. So you have that aspect, and then you rightly mentioned the aspects of keeping you hooked there. And also the mental health issues that our younger generation are going through.
Which is by far the biggest problem.
Exploding.
Ever.
You mentioned a very right example when it comes to TikTok. How TikTok is used in China, how TikTok is used in Europe. I have a young daughter of 3, and she is already very well versed with YouTube, with all of these technologies. And you see the material that constantly comes up. And I will say, but how is my daughter having fun watching for 1 hour people, kids just doing repetitive stuff?
Absolutely. And more importantly, what is she learning?
What is she
What
learning?
is she
from it?
learning?
So that's a threat. That's a threat, especially to our younger generation. So we have to do something about it, and we are in the process to do something. Still at an early stage, but we are also trying to tackle it.
That's great. It's great to know that
Something is going on there.
that something is happening there. It makes me sleep a little better at night. Let's say I'm like when you work in the cybersecurity industry, you're sort of paranoid by default. But when these things sometimes it is absolutely. But when these things come to light, and sort of people start actually speaking about it, you go, hey, listen, this guy isn't crazy. This is actually what happens. It's actually what happens. Talk to me about sort of, this might be a bit of a drastic notion and a drastic idea, but I think in the early days of the United States, or in the early days of industry rather, the consolidation of the economic landscape came to a point where it was non-conducive for the economy at all, right? You had a couple of families, and those families owned the states, right? Exactly. So you had the Vanderbilts and the Carnegies and the Rockefellers, etc. And then the US one day just woke up and said, you know what? We're splitting all of these, and we got General Electric, and we got Chevron, and we got, well, Chase ended up getting split as well. But anyway, we had this because the US government back then, we're talking about over 100 years ago, had decided to sort of split these companies. What happened is we ended up in a situation where we had a market which is now competitive again, right? Whereas it seems to be that we're approaching an age where these companies affect people's lives on a fantastical level, and their interests and the interests of the people are not really aligned. Is it like a far cry idea to say that there could be some sort of push to say, you know what, Facebook, your social media division and your VR division should be separate, for example?
Definitely, and the biggest issue that we are facing is that people are not aware of what is happening. And that is one of the biggest issues that we are facing. So people are saying, okay, Facebook is for free, and I'm not giving in anything, and I'm part of the community. No,
if it's free, you are the product.
It's not for free. You are being the product yourself. Absolutely. You are being profiled. You are being bombarded by advertisement, targeted advertisement. You are being bombarded, and your personal data is being sold, transferred to other companies to make money from your profile. So it's a big issue, and it's a bigger issue because these platforms, these big tech companies now have become the new public utilities of our times.
Absolutely.
So before, public utilities were electricity, water,
phone.
These were the public utilities. So if your electricity is out, end of the world. I remember 2 years ago, if I'm not mistaken, when Meta, WhatsApp were down for 4 hours, 5
Yeah,
hours.
the world froze, remember? Literally
All
froze.
hell broke loose. Everyone was questioning what is happening, this and that. So it's a fact that these platforms, these big tech companies have become essential to our lives. Whether you use them, whether or not, they are dominating our lives. And it's a Wild West kind of thing. So we have to do something to try to regulate as much as possible by not stopping development, but at the same time, come on. We cannot accept the fact that they can regulate themselves.
Of course
that
not.
they can have their code of practices which they abide with.
Of course not.
No, it's impossible. And that was one of the biggest issues that we had pre-2019 before this legislature in Europe.
Which is that we expected them to do that.
That we were always playing the friendly game with them. For example, now we are having this issue with political ads. We are getting Meta all the time pushing us, don't regulate political ads in Europe because we will be taking off the plug from Europe when it comes to political ads. So we will be stopping all political ads from Europe. This is the attitude of big tech companies when you are trying to regulate.
I hear you.
So they will tell you, stop regulating, because if you regulate, we'll get out of Europe.
I don't think it should necessarily.
But it never happens.
Yeah.
It never happens. But we have to be bold, we have to be courageous. So the decisions that we have to take, the reforms that we have to do them. Again, going back to the common charger, we had a lot of people complaining with us. We had a lot of
I'm
also
sure.
consumers which were telling us, are you crazy? What are you trying to do? Even
sure.
today.
For sure.
But you are changing my standard to a lower standard. You are imposing the USB-C.
Lower standard. Find one
which
person.
can break up more easily.
Find one person that complains about this, that knows the actual data rate, transfer rate of Lightning versus USB. They have no idea. I don't even know exactly, and I'm more deep in tech than most people. So,
But
whatever.
that is advertisement. That is like
Marketing.
being able to market your product and. But we have to deal with these realities.
Absolutely. What is the European Union's plans for regulating child use of the internet? And before for you answer, I just want to sort of just add a little tidbit onto this here. So I was spending some time recently working with a specific startup that's trying to solve this problem, and I don't have kids yet. So it never really sort of came to mind, you know what I mean? And when I met the founder, I spent a little bit of time thinking like, okay, if I had a kid, you know, how would I handle them accessing tech and accessing the internet? And I was like, I'd be kind of worried to let kids, for example, not play specific games. I don't care about age walling on specific games and stuff like that, because whether a kid is playing something that's, you know, that's full of guns, blood, and violence, I think is a separate issue, right? What I'm more concerned about is I wouldn't let my kid go to a playground with some random 40-year-old. So why would I let my kid in a digital playground with some random 40-year-old?
A question in reverse.
Please.
Would you accept the fact of allowing age verification to use biometric data of your child to verify the age to access apps or platforms?
Fantastic question. I'm glad you asked. If it's done right, only if it's done right, absolutely. I'll tell you why.
That's the $1 million question.
I'll tell you
if
why.
It's done right in this particular.
Yes. Now we already have the technology to be able to do it right. The tech is not the problem. The tech is rarely the problem. It's usually the people. Okay. So there is an idea in tech called ZKP, Zero Knowledge Proofs. And the idea of ZKP is that I can share data with you based on a data set which you don't have access to, and you will be able to query the specific data set and get a response based on data set that's cryptographically correct without ever seeing it. That is, I think, the Holy Grail.
Our biggest issue right now, and I'm also directly involved in that coincidentally, because I'm the negotiator in the Internal Market Committee of the Child Sexual Abuse Material Revision Regulation. So,
thank you for your service. That's
we are in
you must have seen some terrible
we
things.
are in a situation whereby we have to balance things out. So, the original proposal from the Commission went in the direction of breaking up data encryption to protect children. So we have a situation whereby hashes today are being used to catch up, let's put it in simple words, to catch up child abusive material online.
Okay.
Do we have the right technology as things stand today to catch? And how can we go about it to catch new CSAM, new child sexual abuse material, which has not already been hashed? How can we deal with grooming, for example? You mentioned the issue of gaming.
Grooming, exactly.
You mentioned the
That's
issue
what
of gaming.
scares me the
So
most.
you say, I'm safe, and it's not an issue for me for children to play on the PlayStation, maybe a little bit violent games. I'm also a little bit skeptical about that, but
Exactly.
let's leave the argumentation aside.
But
That's
the
another
parenting
argument.
issue, you know. Like,
That's another argument. But when they are on this ecosystem, your children spending a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 10-year-old spending 4 hours playing these games with also a system whereby they can chat. Grooming is happening there.
absolutely, absolutely, and it's scary. Huh?
How can you tackle grooming online? If not by basically doing mass surveillance online. So you have this, and this is the biggest challenge that we have right now when it comes to, not for hashed material, because that is obvious.
That's easy. That's
But
easy.
when you have new material
Yeah,
and when you have grooming,
yeah,
it's like going through a subway.
yeah,
So you have one criminal in the whole Vgura community.
yeah.
But to catch that one criminal, you have to make surveillance on everyone.
Beautiful. Okay, so
And that is the biggest challenge that we have. Protecting our children, removing as fast as we
100%.
can that offensive criminal data, images, doing a big fight when it comes to grooming, because that is a reality on Instagram, on Facebook, on TikTok, on everywhere. On all these platforms that are being used by minors. But at the same time, is everyone a criminal?
absolutely
If
not.
I am, so from Monday to Thursday, I'm away from my daughter. My wife sends me an image of my daughter without her t-shirt after having a bath or something, and her dead. Can I be seen as an accomplice, as a criminal, as someone being targeted directly by authorities that have to be set up in each and every member state because my wife or my partner is sending me an image of my daughter because it is caught up directly by AI?
No, you need.
So we need this balance.
Yes.
Protecting minors online, in this day and age, you cannot stop minors from using technologies.
Of course not.
It's not.
Of course not.
It's not a safe environment, but it's a fact. The traditional open spaces, village halls, playing fields, they are not the playing fields of our children.
No, they're
Our
gone.
children are interacting online. So what we must do is try to find this right balance between protecting our children, but at the same time,
Absolutely.
our fundamental rights of privacy, data protection, mass surveillance. We have also to tackle that. So
Absolutely.
our biggest issue right now is to try to find this right balance between protecting minors and absolutely not accept the issue of breaking up end-to-end encryption, which is basically WhatsApp, or putting everyone in the square of being a criminal. That's not right.
It's indeed
It's a
very,
argument,
very difficult, very hard to find a specific solution. But you very nicely, I think, touched on the sort of greatest problems of regulators, right? Especially in sort of terms of security and privacy, because they're two opposing forces. And from a personal perspective, I am a freedom of speech advocate and a privacy advocate, right? So I come from a particular perspective, but I also think that there are ways to be able to have security while preserving privacy. It's very difficult to find a balance, but what I know,
but it's achievable.
it's achievable. We need to do better, but it's definitely achievable. Alex, this was a fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks to you.
Have a wonderful day. Cheers.
Thanks a lot.